Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I am sharing with you how to make your very own sturdy summer bag. Now before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out another one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. Now let's find out the materials we need to make our very own bag. 4 stitch markers, just imagine there's a 4th one there. And we're going to be using an 8mm crochet hook today. I'm just using a metal one because of the type of material that we're using. I do have a resin 8mm, but this is some sturdy cotton. So this is Knitcraft Return of the Mac macrame cord is essentially what it is. It's marked as a chunky weight. So you can achieve the same bulk by using 2 strands of worsted or Aran weight cotton. This is from Hobbycraft, which is a shop in the UK, and I'm using 2 colours today. My main colour is going to be linen, and the second colour is this beautiful sage green, and I think they work so well together. You're going to need about 165 metres, so obviously if you're double stranding you'll need double that of your main colour, and then probably about 40 metres of your contrast colour, or 80 metres if you're double stranding. So you need 2 of the linen and half of one of the sage to create this bag exactly. This does have a lovely long handle and is a very generous sized bag. So the recommended hook size is 6 to 7mm, but as I've already said, we've gone up to an 8, mainly so it isn't quite so hard on our hands, but this is a bit of a workout making one of these because it is such big yarn and it's quite tough in the texture as well, which is exactly what I wanted for this type of bag. Super sturdy. I'm confident that it will carry most of the stuff I like to take to the beach with me without being a big beach bag. Sometimes you just want to go down to the pool and you're taking your book, your phone and your sun cream, and everything can fit in there, no problem whatsoever. This is a beginner friendly pattern. We're only going to be using single crochets, chains and a few slip stitches to create this extra long crossbody handle as well. If you want to, you can of course adjust the strap length to make it good for you, and I'll give you those instructions a little bit later on in the video when we get to that section. Let's gather those materials and get started. So we're going to start with our main colour, which for me is the linen, and we're going to just start by making a slip knot, leaving a reasonably sized tail so we can weave that in later. I'm going to pop that onto the hook. We're going to start by making a chain, and we're going to work on both sides of this chain, which is how we get it to work in the round. We're going to start by yarning over the hook and pulling through to create our chains, and we're going to do a chain of 17. So that was 1, 2, 3, 16 and 17. So our chain shouldn't be very tight, it should be quite flexible, but we are going to work on both sides of this chain. So like we would if we're working a project flat, we're going to start by working into our second chain from hook. This loop never counts. There's our first chain, and we're going to be working 1 US single crochet into that second chain from hook. So we insert the hook, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over and pull through 2. Because this project is worked in a continuous round, in that we don't join the rounds or do a chain 1 to start, I'm going to recommend that you grab a stitch marker and just place that through that first stitch that we've made so that we know where we started our round. We're going to move this stitch marker up throughout our project each time we start a new round. We're then going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 chains. Because we're working on both sides of our chain, we're just going to go underneath that top loop of our chain because we're going to work on the other side. So we just insert our hook, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through 2. We're repeating that for a total of 14 times. So that's number 1, 2, 3. So continue all the way down your chain, and you should have your last chain there, and we're going to work in that one together. So work 1 single crochet into each of your chains down. There should be 14 of them by the time you reach your final chain. So once you've worked your 14 single crochets, you should have your marked stitch and then 14 single crochets all the way down, and your last chain is ready to work into. We're then going to work 3 single crochets into that last chain. So we insert our hook into the final chain to work 1, reinsert into the same again for number 2, and you'll see that my chain's starting to rotate, and I've already grabbed my tail to start working over that tail and try and hide the knot from our slip knot when we work our 3rd and final single crochet into that last chain. So we're going to rotate our project to work down the other side of our chain, and we're going to work 14 single crochets, so 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 chains. So you can see that you've got a hole and it looks like a little cross of fabric or yarn at the top there, and we're just going to insert our hook into that lovely big hole. This is the one we've just worked into, working into that next one there. I'm going to work over my tail to save me weaving that in later, working a single crochet, and we're doing that 14 times back down to where we started our round. You see sometimes the holes are a little bit smaller. We're just going in where that yarn is crossed. See the cross there, and that's where we want to go into. Still working over my tail so that that's going to get woven in for me. Because this fabric is a little bit tougher, or this yarn is a little bit tougher, it means that it's going to not slip out at any point. So working 1 single crochet into each of this chain on the other side of our chain, all the way back down. We're doing 14 of those. So if you were counting, you've got those 3 single crochets into that last chain there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We've got 1 more to do. There's number 14. And then we're back to where we first started our project and where that first stitch is worked. We're going to be adding 2 further single crochets into that last space. So we just insert the hook to work 1 and reinsert to work the 2nd. So that is the end of round 1. So at the end of round 1, you should have a stitch count of 34 single crochets. Now we're not joining this round at all. Instead, we're going to continue straight into round 2, working into that marked stitch. So I'm just going to remove my stitch marker for a moment, ready to go straight into round 2. So instead of slip stitching or joining, we're just going to work our first stitch of round 2 into that next stitch. In this case, we're going to be working 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch of the first round to work our first single crochet. So we just insert, yarn over, bring a loop up and finish that single crochet, and then we reinsert to work the second single crochet into that same stitch. I'm going to encourage you to grab your stitch marker back and pop it back in where we worked that first stitch of our round. So we've done the first 2, so I've just marked that first stitch so I know where I started my round. We're then going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 stitches. So we're just inserting, bringing our loop up and pull through 2. We're going to do that for the next 14 stitches. That's 3, 4, 12, that's 13, and number 14. So once you've worked your 14th single crochet, you should be back to that last stitch that has 3 single crochets all worked into that last chain back from round 1. And what we're going to do here is we're going to work 2 single crochets into each of the next 3 stitches. For this, we're simply going to be working an increase, and that will allow our width of the bag at the bottom to be slightly increased, so it's not as thin as this at the bottom. So we insert the hook into that next stitch to work our first single crochet, and we're reinserting in the same stitch again to work our second single crochet. We're doing this 3 times, so that was once. We're going to do the same into the next stitch, working 2 single crochets. That's 1, and 2, and we do it for a third time into that third stitch, making sure we go under both loops. So that's 1 and 2, and as you can see, as you're working your stitches, it almost turns it back around so we can continue along the other side again. We're going to be working 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 stitches again. So that's 1, 2 and 14, and we should have just 2 stitches remaining, and into these last 2 stitches we're going to be working 2 single crochets into each of them. So we insert the hook to work our first single crochet, and then reinsert into the same stitch to work that second single crochet, and we're repeating that into the final stitch of this round as well. So that's 1 and 2. At the end of round 2, we've increased our stitch count, and we should now have a total of 40 single crochets all the way around. Now we're back to where we started our round, and again, we're not joining. We don't join in this pattern at all. We just work into that marked stitch for the first stitch of round 3. Just going to place my stitch marker there for a moment while we work the first 2 stitches of round 3. Just like we did before, we're going to be working 2 single crochets into that first stitch. So we insert our hook to work 1 single crochet, and then we reinsert into the same stitch again to work our second single crochet. I'm going to pause there just to reinsert my stitch marker into that first stitch that we made of the round, just so we remember where that was. We're then going to work 2 single crochets into that next stitch as well. So we insert our hook to work the first and reinsert to work the second. We're then going to work 14 single crochets, so 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 stitches. That's 1 and 2 and number 14. And it should bring us back to where we've increased into those stitches previously. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, where we worked our first increases of the round, and then we have an additional 14 single crochets ready to increase once again into the next 6 stitches this time. So we're going to be working 2 single crochets into each of the next 6 stitches, which means we are inserting our hook to work that first one, and reinserting to work that second single crochet, all into the same stitch. This time we're doing it 6 times. So that was number 1. We work 1 and 2 into that same stitch for a second time. Now for the third time we do the same again, working 2 single crochets into that same stitch. For a fourth time, once and 2. This is number 5. We're inserting to work, those 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And finally, for the 6th time, we are working 2 single crochets into that same stitch. You can see that it's creating a lovely round edge at the edge of our bag. Once we've done those 6 increases of working 2 single crochets into each of those stitches, we're going to be working 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 single crochets. So we're doing 1, so we're working 14 single crochets back to our final increases of round 3. 4. We should now have 4 stitches remaining, and into each of these last remaining 4 stitches we're going to be working 2 single crochets. This is going to help us match up both edges. We're going to be working 2 single crochets into each of the next 4 stitches. We work that first single crochet and then reinsert into the same stitch to work the second. So that's 1 and then 1 and 2 for a second time. And for a third time, we work 1 and 2 And finally, for the fourth time, we're going to work 1 single crochet and reinsert for the second single crochet. I'm going to show you what mine actually looks like rather than make it all flat for you, just so you can see that if yours is a little bit wobbly, don't worry too much. So at the end of round 3, you should now have 52 single crochets, all when you add up all the way around, counting those V's, you should now have 52. This is the total width of our bag. It doesn't get any wider than this. And it's a great size for these crossbody bags that aren't overly big. You don't want to shove loads of stuff in them. It makes a really nice width to carry on your shoulder. So for rounds 4 to 8, it's lovely and simple. I'm going to remove our stitch marker. Remember, we're not joining. We're just going straight into that first stitch, and we work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So remember to pop in your stitch marker once you've finished that first stitch, so you know where the start of your round is. So we're going into round 4, and we're working 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and we're doing that for rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So continue to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and I'm going to meet you at this time at the end of round 8, where we're going to be changing colours. So work those rounds and I will see you in a few moments. So I've reached the end of round 8. I wanted to let you know how to count your rounds as well, just in case you do lose track. I always go back to where the hole is in the middle of my chain, and I count behind my stitch marker. You can count down or up, it's either way. So I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is round 8. Now for round 9, we're going to change to our next colour. We're going to try and create as seamless a colour change as possible. So I'm just going to pull back my last stitch of round 8, and I'm going to change in the middle of my last stitch. I'm going to insert yarn over and bring up a loop. I'm then going to put my new colour over the hook with the tail at the back and just bring that through and pull on my working yarn just to tighten that down. Make sure I've got a nice long tail so I can weave those in later. And we're going straight into round 9. We're not going to do a standard single crochet into the first stitch of round 9. Just going to remove my stitch marker, and then in my new colour instead we're going to do a slip stitch. It still counts as a stitch, just it replaces our single crochet, and as you can see, just placing those ends over so I can secure those as well. So I'm bringing it up to the right height and then straight through the loop of my hook, and this now becomes our first stitch of the round, and we can continue to work 1 single crochet in the rest of this round. I am going to mark that slip stitch just so we know where we made it, and then we can just continue to work the remainder of round 9, placing 1 single crochet into each stitch around. Now I'm going to crochet over my main colour because I'm going to make that a tail and weave that in later, just to create less bulk and so that I don't have to carry the colour up through the back of my project. You can carry it up because there are only a few. We're only doing 1 round of our contrasting colour and then we're changing straight back. But I'm going to fasten off as I work around so that I can weave in the ends a little bit neater. Do double check that you're pulling your tails nice and tight so that you're getting an even colour on both sides. So for round 9, we're working, continuing in our contrasting colour, and I'll meet you back around. Did you hear that pop? Naughty thing. I'll meet you back around where we're going to be changing back to our original colour, and I'm going to show mine as rejoining just so you can see how to add in that new colour once again. So I'll see you in a moment once you've finished round 9, working 1 single crochet again into each stitch around. So I've worked back around to the last stitch and I'm going to get ready to change back to my main colour. So again, I'm just going to add back in my new colour halfway through that last single crochet, bring down that loop to tighten, and then I'm slip stitching back into that last stitch that we slip stitched into, working over both tails. A little bit tighter, there we go, and just do another slip stitch. And it creates an almost seamless colour change by doing it this way. And again, for the rest of this round, we're going to use that, not too tight, because it's going to become a stitch. I'm going to mark my slip stitch, that way it doesn't become too small. Don't want it to be too tight. So then from here, we're going to be working our next 3 rounds in our main colour, in my case the linen, before we repeat round 9, 10, 11 and 12. For round 10, 11 and 12, we're working 1 round of single crochet into each stitch around in our main colour, and then we're going to be repeating rounds 9, so where we've just done this colour change, so a 4-row repeat. We're going to repeat this until we've created the depth of bag that we want. To recreate the bag that I made, we're going to repeat those rounds 3 times. So for rounds 13 through to 23, we're going to be repeating rounds 9 to 12. Now in that last repeat, we're going to end our final repeat after doing 2 rounds in our main colour, because we're going to be working our handle at that point. So at the moment you're doing round 10, 11 and 12 in our main colour, and then we're going to repeat that 1 round in our contrast colour, and we're going to do that, as I said, until you've reached the depth of the bag that you want. To recreate the size that I've made, just need to do it 3 times, but we do need to remember to end our final repeat 1 row early, so you just do 2 rounds of your main colour, because then we're going to add on our handle in that main colour, and we work that final round as we add on our handle. So continue to repeat rounds 9 to 12 until you have a total of 23 rounds, and then I'll meet you ready to work on our handle. We're going to need some more stitch markers at that point, so have those ready and I'll see you in a moment. Once we've finished round 23, remembering that we're ending our repeat 1 round early so that we can add on a final round once we've done our handles, we are ready to work out where we are going to place our handles. So if we lay our bags flat, you can see they're not perfectly flat because this does tend to twist a little bit. It's fine when it's in use, but for this, we really need it to be as flat as possible so that we can calculate where to place our handles. So what we're looking to achieve is to have 7 stitches on each side marked, with 19 stitches in between on both sides. I tend to start on the side away from where I'm working, and I'm looking for, oh there we are, a stitch to be in the middle. So then we're going 3 stitches either side. So when it's laid flat, you should automatically have a stitch that's kind of on the turn, and then 3 stitches either side. I'm going to grab my stitch marker in the middle, and then 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to place a stitch marker in that 3rd stitch there without going through the other side, and counting round again. I've got 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to place another stitch marker there through that stitch, and then we can count around from here. Roughly, you can see that mine's already automatically given me 1 in the middle, but is it that stitch or not? Best way to check is to count back 19 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. There's stitch number 19. So I'm going to mark the next one along. There's 19, and I'm marking that 20th stitch around. And I should, if I move that out of the way, in theory, have 1, 2, 3. I turn that a little bit. 4, 5, 6. There's number 7. So let me mark that one. And if my maths works, I should have 19 stitches before I get to my next marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 19. Wonderful. Once you've got 19 stitches in between your markers on both sides, your stitch markers should almost perfectly line up with one another, and your bag should be pretty much flat, because these are where your handles are going to go. They're going to come out and over, straight over. It's just one handle, and we're going to work it straight onto the bag. No fastening off. We're going to work straight on. We're going to work across and back across the side of the bag. We're going to make it so we can do one final round to finish off our bag. To make my life really easy, I'm not going to fasten this off yet. I'm just going to pop it inside my bag so it keeps that end out of the way, so I don't have to weave it in just yet. So the first thing we need to do is to work one single crochet into each stitch around to our first marker. So we just work one single crochet into each stitch around to our first marker. And then we're going to slip stitch into that marked stitch. So we just insert our hook, pull through, and straight through that loop on our hook. From here, we're going to make our chain as long as we want our handle to be. So for me, I'm going to do a chain of 90, because that's going to give me more of a crossbody length. Remember that this handle will stretch ever so slightly, so don't make your chain too long. But if you're making one to look exactly the same as mine, a chain of 85 to 90 will be perfect. The actual count for your chain isn't that important. You just need to remember how many you made, so you can work out how many stitches you should have in each row of your handle. So I'm going to make a chain of 90 just by simply yarning over, and pulling through 90 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 90. Now I'm going to grab a stitch marker just to catch the loop on my hook for a moment, because the next stage we need to do is we're going to join this chain into the marked stitch on the other side of our bag. So once I've got that last loop of my chain secured, I'm going to rotate my bag so that I have the top closest to me and facing me, and we're going to join into what is now the front loop, the loop that's closest to us in this marked stitch. So what I'm going to do is remove my marker and just mark the back loop of that stitch, because we're going to be inserting our hook to slip stitch and join our chain to that last remaining loop. We need to make sure that our chain is not twisted. So I'm going to grab from where we just created our chain, coming out, making sure that the front of the chain is facing us. I'm just going to run that through my fingers. You can see how twirly it is over there, to make sure that there's no twists in our chain. All the way back to where we marked that last loop. You can see there's our marked loop, and this is the way we want to join it. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker. I'm not letting go of this chain. I'm going to place my loop back on. No twisting, no turning, making sure that you have the top of the bag facing you. You can see where that marked back loop is. Instead, we're just going to insert our hook underneath the loop closest to us of the marked stitch and slip stitch to join. Once we've done that first slip stitch, we're going to slip stitch into the back loop of the next stitch along. Just doing another slip stitch as well. And then we are ready to work back across the chain. The way that we're going to work our chain is going to leave this side exposed to the edge of our handle. So when we're wearing it, we see this beautiful chain rather than massive gaps. So we're going to turn our work back so that our bag is facing us, the right side again. And we should have the right side of our chain facing us, but instead of working into the top loop of our chain, we're going to turn our chain over, and you can see, if I turn this angle, so there's the front, and if we turn our bag, you can see the back bumps of our chain. Now I'm going to make my life really easy. I'm going to skip over that first chain and go into the next one. So we're going to work into these back bumps of our chain. You can see from the front here, when we tilt it to the side, you can see the back bumps, which means that the normal element of our chain is going to be visible from the right side of our bag. The first one is always the trickiest to find and to locate. So once you know where your back bump is, there's the right side of our chain and there's that back bump. We simply insert our hook underneath. Stacey says simply. I promise you, once you've done the first one, it's so much easier. You can pull it out if you need to. Pop the bump onto your loop and we're going to work one single crochet. So we yarn over, pull through. So we have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through 2 to complete the stitch. We're going to work one single crochet into each back bump of our chain, and our chain count is going to reduce by 1. So I started with a chain of 90. I'm going to end with a stitch count of 89. So there's our second one. Oh, this is quite awkward. So you can see now that I've worked that first one, those back bumps are much easier to see and they become a lot easier to insert your hook into, I promise. And you're just going to work one single crochet into each back bump across. And it's going to create a really nice, neat handle, but by leaving these front loops empty, it's going to allow us to work that final round again when we reach the edge of our handle. So continue to work one single crochet into each back bump of the chain across, and I'll meet you at the end of this row so that we can attach the handle to the other side of the bag. I will see you in a moment. So I'm just working my second to last single crochet. So we've got this last one here and there's that back bump. It looks bigger, but it will just make it neater if we work into it. And then we are ready to slip stitch and turn into the next stitch. So at the moment you've probably got the right side of your bag facing you. So we're slip stitching into the back loop of the next stitch. And then we slip stitch into the back of the next one again. Then we are ready to turn. So at the moment your handle should be nice, have a little stretch to it, but because we've worked into the other side of our chain, it's not as stretchy as normal. We're going to work one single crochet into each stitch across. Oh, that's a bit of a big loop, Fiona. Let me redo that one. We want these to look even. There we go. So we're just working one single crochet into each stitch across again, all the way to the other side of our handle. And I'm going to meet you at the end of row 2 to join this row to our bag as well. So I will see you in a moment at the end of this row. I'm just working into my last stitch. Oops, it's sliding away from me. Come back. There we go. Working that final single crochet, and then we need to have the wrong side of our bag facing, and we're working slip stitching into those next 2 back loops again. Say wrong side, the inside I suppose. We're just picking up that back loop. Oh, there we go. And then we're ready to work our next row of single crochets. And we're going to repeat this. As you can see, we only really have only got 2 more rows to go. So it's going to be quite a nice chunky handle. So we're going to repeat this, what we've just done, by working one single crochet into each stitch across, slip stitching into the back loop of the next 2 stitches until we've filled all the spaces of this handle. So we're just going into row 3 now. When we get to the other end, we're going to slip stitch across the next. We're just working row 3 now. We've just slip stitch across those 2 stitches. Row 4, we'll slip stitch across the next 2. Row 5, we'll finish that side, and we'll slip stitch across these last 2 just to finish. So continue to repeat, working one single crochet into each stitch across, and then slip stitching into those next 2 back loops of your project, and I will meet you once you've completed your rows. Just finished my 5th row, and I'm just working my last 2 slip stitches just to join again, just into those back loops, take that last one out. And then all that's left to do is to work one final round of single crochet all the way around our project. And we're going to work these underneath both loops of our stitches. And then when we get to our handle, we're going to work just into those front loops that are left to work. Give the edging of our handle at the bottom just a nice neat finish. So work around to the base of your first handle, and I will meet you there in a moment. So as you know, when we started our handle, we didn't work into the back loop only to give us a really secure start to our handle. So instead, we're going to work around the posts or the holes that we can to create the rest of this row for the first stitch. So you can see you've got a hole next to where you did your first slip stitch. So I'm going to insert and work a single crochet there. And then I'm going to work around this post here. So I'm going to insert my hook around that post and work my next single crochet. And then we have our front loop. So it makes life a little bit easier. So this is our front loop here. So we're just going to insert our hook underneath that. It is going to be quite tight to work those next few single crochets to finish our bag off beautifully. So it gives us a really, sorry, you can't really see it there, but it gives us a really nice edging. And a bit of a rib at the bottom of our handle as well. Oh, we can eliminate that one now. And then we're back to working back through our stitches again. There's only a few front loops we need to work into. And then as we continue, I'm going to just show you what mine looks like. So it gives you a nice finished edge to the start of your handle. All that slip stitching is hidden on the inside of your bag. And there's no sewing. What more could we ask for? So again, we're going to continue all the way around to the other handle, working one single crochet into each of these stitches, essentially finishing that last round that we missed off before we started our handle. I'll meet you around at the next handle to work those last few stitches, ready to fasten off and wear our bags. Just working that last stitch before the handle, and we're going to have the same challenge here where we need to work in and around the posts to fit in. Oh no, we can work one there. So you can work our first single crochet there, then we need to work around that post again to place the next one, and then just like before, we can work in these front loops that we left specifically for this reason, so we can give this really nice edge to our bag. One more, or one final one, should I say. And I'm going to work loop for that final slip stitch that we made. And then I'm probably going to do an invisible join for this project because it's a little bit challenging to weave this in. So once you have worked your final round, we are ready to fasten off. Now I'm going to fasten off a rather long length because this is such a thick yarn. As you can see, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to weave in. Pull that length all the way through and grab my needle and thread this through. It's going to be a little bit tight because this is not a chunky one, and it should be. Oops, there we go. And to create an almost seamless join, I'm going to create a fake stitch. So I'm right on the corner here, which is quite a good place to be. So I'm simply going to insert my needle underneath the next stitch like a slip stitch, and then come back through the middle of that last stitch, kind of anchoring it in to the back of that handle to pull it through, and it makes it a near seamless join. Let me do that again for you. This is a technique that I use in a lot of my projects that work in the round, and it is called the invisible join. I have a whole tutorial just on that in particular, but I'll show you once again if I can get this back on my needle. So we're creating a fake stitch. So I'm making sure that this stitch is the right size that I want it to be. And we start by inserting from the front to the back under the next stitch with our needle and pull that all the way through, and that cinches those two together. And then we're going to insert our hook through, go back to the stitch we've just worked, inserting our hook through the, it's a needle, inserting our needle through the middle of that stitch and then through our handle. You can see it coming out there, and that will just cinch in that final stitch and make it super neat without having to do a slip stitch or a fasten off. You can then weave this end all the way in. There you are, I've just woven mine, and there's just the other end to do here. For now, I am just going to snip that off and tuck it in so I can show you the finished project. And we have possibly, in my humble opinion, the most perfect summer bag, because it is chunky, it is incredibly strong, there's a lot of space inside for all your summer essentials, and more importantly for me, you can wear this strap crossbody, which means that it's very comfortable to wear. You can hold your bag in the front, you could add on a fastening if you want to. I don't feel that this, well, I know who this bag is going to and they don't want a close on it, so I haven't done it. So thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial to make your very own sturdy summer bag. If you haven't already, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and of course hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, so you never miss out another one of my crochet patterns and tutorials again. It's been an absolute pleasure showing you how to make this bag, and I will see you in the next video.